Today is Monday, November 3rd, and this is Spring Office Hours, Season 4, Episode 29. Spring Boot 4 is almost here. My name is Dan Vega, Spring Developer Advocate at Broadcom, joined by my good friend and colleague, DaShaun Carter. DaShaun, how's it going?
It's going wonderful. I am just returning from 3 weeks of travel over in Europe, and it has been wonderful. Great time. I love hanging out with customers. I love seeing our community taking these release candidates for a spin. It is a great time to be a Spring developer. I'm having a good time.
Indeed it is. Well, welcome back. I'm sure it's good to be home.
It is. I got a really good night's sleep last night.
Yeah.
Really good. So yeah, I'm feeling good. It is good to be home.
So, traveling across Europe, talking to customers, what were some of the major conversations you were having?
I don't know if you've heard, but AI is really popular. Lots of
Oh,
AI.
Allen Iverson?
No. This
Oh, no.
artificial intelligence, this Gen AI movement
Okay.
has been very hot topic.
Gotcha.
So I gave a few workshops. I got to hear some amazing things that people are doing. It is definitely moving faster than anybody could have imagined. I see why the thought leaders are like, oh yeah, we're gonna have this in this many months or this many years. Things are moving fast. I don't know about the big picture, like where these advancements are gonna land, but I know that enterprises, startups, and everything in between are moving fast. They are integrating this Gen AI tool set, these capabilities. They are integrating them into their everyday development and their business value, business workflows. It's happening, and it's incredibly fast at how people are able to adopt and deliver this stuff to production.
That's awesome. Yeah, so while you were gone, I had the great Daniel Garnier-Moreau on the show with me, and we talked about securing MCP servers. So that was a lot of fun. Everybody, I'm sure, talking AI, have been talking about AI, has been dealing with MCP servers. So we're building MCP servers locally. We're starting to put them out for everyone to consume. And to do that, you need to secure them. So he had some previous blog posts on this, but he's now updated that because there's some new code that I don't know if you've seen it, but it's over on the Spring AI community, and some nice ways to go ahead and secure these MCP servers. So
I'm going to say this. Daniel was at DevOps Belgium, and he delivered content at DevOps Belgium, and I had one person from the community give me feedback on like, hey, yeah, I already saw this. I already saw Dan's stuff, and he had taken it for a spin, and he was already sharing the outcomes. So
yeah,
things are moving fast. Yes, that is definitely a thing. The other thing that I realize, every customer, hey, Jitter Ted, thank you for the mic volume. Hopefully I've turned up the volume. Hopefully this works a little better. But the other thing that I see at a lot of, I have yet to see one enterprise grade customer that hasn't already started trying to figure out the guardrails, trying to deliver what we'll call an AI gateway for providing access with some guardrails to these LLMs for internal customers, for internal use cases. Yeah. I'm seeing a lot of adoption in the coding assistants. And that's, in my head, the coding assistant, the stuff that we plug in our IDE, the Claudes, the cursors, the windsurfs I put in the same bucket, but the Codex and the Gemini, those kind of tools that are going into the developer's tool belt are on one side of the shop. And in my head, the other side is when we deploy these tools, when we deploy a tool, an MCP tool, that gives us information, real-time information about something in our enterprise, whether it's a insurance policy information that, like in the chatbot, I want to see, does my current policy cover this? And they are now exposing that. And so there's this kind of box where people are trying to deliver MCP tools. And then there's also the box for those MCP tools to get access to the right things, to make sure personal information, policy information isn't going to the wrong places. We don't want to train somebody else's LLM on our customer policy information, for example. So I'm seeing a lot of this work being done in those two buckets around where do we deliver the MCP tools and what do we connect them to? There's a lot of work.
Yeah, AI is such a large umbrella that really kind of covers a lot of different things. So I think, like most of us, it's still early and we're all still learning how to navigate this new world we live in. So
I shouldn't be surprised at all of the things that I see. So AI is happening.
yeah,
Lots of other stuff that I was talking about as well, right? The upgrade story, which I'm still very passionate about and involved in, is how do we keep our software upgraded? Especially we got Spring Boot 4 right around the corner.
yeah,
I have witnessed teams that wrote recipes to create a new branch to take their existing Spring Boot stuff and upgrade it to Spring Boot 4 release candidates. Even if it's just bumping the Spring Boot version, they're taking it for a spin. So that there are teams out there that are leveraging and using the release candidates that have now been released, and they're using it. And yeah, I like this term. Maybe I should adopt this. Upgrade Ember.
Upgrade Ember. I don't know a
I
smooth way
like
to
it.
say that,
It looks
but I like
really
the
good.
term.
Hard to say, but it looks
Yes.
great. I love it.
Well, hey, the calendar has changed. We are in November, which means it is time for Spring Framework 7 and Spring Boot 4. That is going to be our topic today. Just want to remind everyone, thanks for joining us here on the live stream. If you're here, get your questions in. We'll see if we can't get them answered. If not, you can go ahead and watch the replay of this live stream on the Spring Developer YouTube channel. And you can take us wherever you get your podcasts from, like our friend Ted does on his runs, in the car, wherever you want to, wherever you get your podcasts, you can go ahead and listen to the Spring Office Hours. So,
if you're here live, right? The thing that I always want to say is like, say hi. Let us know where you're from, because my mom and dad do always watch. They love seeing where people are joining from. But also, if you're here live and you've got questions and you don't ask, that's your fault. Because when you come to my house for dinner, if you leave hungry, that's your fault. If you're here and you don't ask your questions, that's your fault. Put your questions in the chat. We'll try to get to them as many as possible. We also have a great community here in the chat.
So. That we do. Yep. Thank you all for joining us. All right. So Spring Boot 4 is going to be released later this month, according to calendar.spring.io, one of my other favorite places to visit on the internet, because you get access to the release calendar and find out when things are going to be released. So if you want to, go ahead and check that out. So we are going to devote November to all things Spring Boot 4, Spring Framework 7. We'll have a bunch of shows around them. We have confirmed guests talking about specific things. One that we can kind of go ahead and let out of the bag is our every 6 months, we kind of catch up with the one and only Phil Webb, who is on the Spring team. He'll give us a nice overview of some of the features, but we can just rattle off the new features. But what I like is kind of Phil's perspective on some of those features and how they got in. And, we don't know like which ones were harder to work on and which ones like had to take more thought to get it off the ground, right? And so I always love his kind of perspective on that. So we're going to catch up with Phil Webb on the 20th of this month.
November 20th, 12 p.m. Pacific time. So it's going to be a little bit late for our friends in Europe and in those time zones, but it's going to be amazing. We always have fun with the Spring Boot release parties. Yeah, and it'll be worth your time. It'll be worth your time. Phil's always a great guest on the show, and his insights as co-founder of Spring Boot. He is just an amazing resource, and you'll definitely want to watch and pick up all the new things from that different perspective.
Absolutely. All right. So I've had a chance to dive in and start like really using some of these features lately, because I was like, oh man, if I'm going to start talking about this stuff on the regular, I got to really like understand some of this stuff, because I think like you and I have talked about this in the past, that like when a new version comes out, we see the release notes and, okay, I see that's a new feature, but sometimes I'm not always like sure, like, is that something I'm going to need? Do I need to like understand that? So at least part of our job is to make sure everybody kind of understands the new features at a high level, and then a little bit more than that, right? To go, is that something I want to take a look at? Because, we don't get paid for you using the latest version of Spring Boot, but we want to make sure you understand what's there so you can get everybody else in your organization excited for that upgrade, right?
And here's the thing. All of you out there doing work, we're your customers. And
right.
This is a thing that's hard to explain, but I want all of those companies that I'm their customer. I want them to be using the latest and greatest. I want them to do things more efficiently. So maybe my cost goes down. Maybe my value goes up. This is why I'm using this company's product, because they're doing the good things. So we're all in this together. And we're putting a lot of effort into this software, and we want you to get the value out of everything that we put into it.
Yeah. For me, let's just talk about, I think a good place to start is kind of baselines. And I just want to make sure we're clear on some things, because some people have asked me some questions about this. So when Spring Boot 4 comes out, and obviously if you want to start testing some of this stuff today, start.spring.io. The first release candidate is out. I believe the second one is coming out this week, maybe. You can start using this. So start testing this now. But from a baseline perspective, you can now use JDK 25. Spring Boot 4 optimized for JDK 25, but not the baseline. So we're still baseline on 17, but man, we have this conversation all the time, DaShaun. The things that you can get just by upgrading JDK, and how far we've come, right? When we moved to Spring Boot 3.x, the baseline was JDK 17. Some people are like, oh man, we got to move to JDK 17. Now we're at Spring Boot 4 and JDK 25 is out. That's another 8 versions, right?
Yep.
And just the things that you can get from moving your baseline JDK from 17 to 25. I wish people could just update for that reason alone, right?
Yeah. And you don't have to wait for Spring Boot 4, for Spring Framework 7 to get a lot of those benefits.
Yeah.
Upgrading the JDK, that's free stuff. That's easy stuff. I'm always talking about upgrading Spring, but upgrading your JVM, upgrading Java, that's an easy win. And it's a good muscle to have. We all like free stuff.
Right.
The stuff that we're running in production today, wouldn't it be great if tomorrow it cost a little bit less? It performed a little bit better. That would be amazing, right?
Yep.
That's easy wins. You are 100% right.
So that would be awesome. And then a part of that is, I think we've talked about this a lot too. Some of my favorite features in the JDK have come around Project Loom. So virtual threads we got in Spring Boot 3.2 with the JDK 21, right? There have been some updates to that over recent versions of the JDK, especially JDK 24. If people were held up from moving to virtual threads because of the pinning and synchronization, that has been alleviated. And then in JDK 25, we got scope values. So it's not always just about like features for the sake of getting features. Like these are features that provide real performance benefits. And so again, my hope is, let's get everyone to Spring Boot 4 and JDK 25. I know we can't do it overnight. I've worked for enterprises before. I understand the pace at which this happens, but hopefully we can get you excited.
And the change starts with you, right? If you're just like, oh, we can't upgrade and we won't do anything. If you can't make the move or show the reason, this is another thing that I've been doing a lot of over the last 3 weeks. A simple side-by-side test of your app running on Java 17 and your app running on Java 21 or 25 with virtual threads enabled, you can show some amazing things and you can start to move the needle. Because if everybody says, oh, our company can't do it and it'll take too long, if everybody had attitude, it'll never change. But if you are getting a new Java version every 6 months and a new Spring Boot version every 6 months. And these are changing, right? Like you have an opportunity. Thanks for this feedback. My voice is so noisy, I can hear Dan better. It seems like you're talking from a water well. Let me see if I can change that. I might know what that is.
All right. While you're looking at that, something else I'll mention. Some questions I've gotten. So when we moved to Spring Boot 3.x, there was a lot into that migration from something like 2.7, right? So you had the move to a new baseline for the JDK, which was JDK 17. Along with that, some of the work from migrating from Java EE to Jakarta, that took place. You had, there were some major changes that went into Spring Security. So most enterprises we know are using Spring Security. So there were some changes there. All this to say that there was some thought you had to put into migration from like 2.x to 3.x. There are a lot of great features in 4, but not a lot that I see that are going to like hold people up from migrating, right? If you're running JDK 17, you can still run that. There's no migration to Jakarta. There are some annotation changes. If you're using null safety, like those are going to be deprecated, but seems like an easy enough change to me. And yeah, there's a bunch of new things coming, but nothing that like, oh my gosh, we need to like sit down and really figure out a migration path for this. What are your thoughts on that?
I agree. I agree 100%. The things that I've noticed, if I'm doing a lot of dependency management on my own, if I'm a little bit outside of the release train, I might have some things, but a lot of it is taken care of for you. Yeah, upgrading the parent POM, if you will, that top level project, you're going to get the benefits. And what are you going to see by doing this upgrade without reading the release notes, without doing anything, just by doing the upgrade? You're going to have some that are easy. You might have some that are difficult, but not because of the Spring upgrade, maybe because of some other downstream dependencies is where you're going to run into problems, where you have
Right.
projects that haven't upgraded to the latest version of Jackson. You're going to have some other things, but the easy path, you're going to just get a bunch of the benefits. You're going to see smaller packages, faster building, faster evaluation of your tests, and better performance. Yeah, not a whole lot to think about to do this upgrade.
Right. Okay, let me see if I want to share my screen for those who are in the live stream here. So let me see if I could share. Let's just share a particular window and share this. I wanted to make sure everyone knew about this series on the Spring IO blog. So there is a set of blog posts coming out called The Road to GA. And every week a new blog post has come out. So we've had ones on core Spring resiliency features, API versioning, HTTP service enhancements, the state of HTTP clients, Jackson 3, Kafka queues, multi-factor authentication in Spring Security, and the modularization of Spring Boot, with some more to come. So this is a really good blog post if you want to go ahead and dive into some of these features. I'll go ahead and add this to our chat right now, but I'll also go ahead and add this to the release notes for those of you listening. So I just wanted to mention that. Yeah, so I said I've had a lot of time to kind of dive into some of these features. And so I just want to talk about them at a high level, and hopefully we can dive deeper into some of these. If you want to go read the blog posts, or if we have some guests on that we could talk to, that we can go ahead and figure out. So the first one I want to talk about is null safety. And I know you had a chance to talk about this at a high level, actually a little bit more at Spring IO, correct?
The Spring One. Yep, at Spring One, I got to speak about it a couple of times, but the real magic happened at Spring One when our friends from IntelliJ, they already had the support built into IntelliJ. So when I start using these Spring Boot 4 features in IntelliJ, I was getting all this additional help, this additional context around my null safety. So if I said, hey, yeah, this is null safety or null safe, I was getting this feedback from the IDE, and that was amazing. That's where the real magic happened. me going through the demo that I got, it was cool, and I could definitely spend more time understanding it. But the real magic at Spring One happened when we got all the demos of what this means inside of IntelliJ. The idea that we're not going to run into these null pointer exceptions at runtime in production. That's never fun. We're going to capture them at build time. So capture them on the way to production and prevent that null pointer exception from happening in production. And it's not that nulls are bad, but we just want to know when it's a possibility so that we can do something about it. That's the big benefit. Yeah, IntelliJ IDEA support for Spring is just awesome and continues to get better. So yeah, in the chat, have you taken any of these tools, the JSpecify or Null Away? That's an extension. These are extensions for error prone. Have you taken any of those for a spin? I'm certain that Gingerhead has. I'd be willing to guess that Simon has as well.
Yeah, and you know what? I think I found out. I had an internal presentation with Sebastian Deleuze, who's worked on a lot of this. So you kind of used some of his presentation.
His work. Yep.
And something really stuck out to me that he said, and the same way that we write tests, not because we want to add more code to a code base, right? We write tests because it gives us confidence in changing our code and getting it to production that we're not going to break something, right? As a developer, I feel more confident that I'm not doing something wrong. For me, the JSpecify stuff, the annotations that we're using now, this just gives me more confidence that the code that I'm writing is not going to introduce something. In our case, the infamous null pointer exception, right? Yep. And, as a developer, because I've been doing this so long, I can look at code and go, oh, wait a minute, that might cause an issue in production. But not all the time are you going to be able to recognize those. And now, if we understand like the different annotations and what they're used for, now in my IDE, I get a warning that says, whoa, this may cause a null pointer exception if you don't handle it. So now instead of saying user.firstname, I can say, well, if user is not null, now go ahead and get user first name, right? On top of that, as you said, now we have these build tools too. So we're catching it in our IDE and we're catching it at compilation time. So for me, it's just giving me that confidence that the code that I'm writing is a little bit better, right? And I had someone comment on that, like, I don't see the big deal about this. I don't really ever have null pointer exceptions in production. And I'm like, I feel like that's a rite of passage for Java developers. Maybe you've been doing this a long time and you got good at catching those, but they happen. I don't care how good you are, right?
Yep. Right. It didn't get the label $1 billion problem for nothing. But here's the thing. What is the takeaway is that now all of the Spring projects have this built in. So not only are we making it that you can use it, but we've also built this into all the projects. So if you get a null pointer exception, it won't be from one of the Spring projects that are after Spring Framework 7. It won't be in Spring Boot 4. It'll come from somewhere else. And what is the big deal? If you're using a library that doesn't have this support, you might open the door to these null pointer exceptions. So yeah, your mileage may vary. And for some companies, for some workloads, it's much more important than others.
Yeah, and I think another important part about this is I had some people reach out and say, well, we have this thing called optional in the JDK. Why don't we just use that, right? And optional is fine. If I was starting a brand new project and I could just write an API and use optional and some other things weren't taken into consideration, fine. But if I have an existing application that returns, say, a list of users, right? Or a user in this case, I can't go just change that to an optional of user, right? Because now that breaks the API contract that I already have in place. So for me, that's one thing, breaks existing API signatures. There's some runtime overhead. Also, it's not intended for use with parameters of fields. So I've seen people use it before, but the JDK states that it's clearly only used for return values. So I'm going to need another mechanism for annotating my parameter types that like these things are nullable, right?
Yes.
So those couple of things combined with like, it adds a little complexity too. If you don't know how to use optionals, like I got to unwrap this, I got to check this, then I can get it. Like, yes, optionals baked in the JDK. It's great. But as JitterTed said, not a replacement for all null handling. And I think Sebastian has joked about this, but like if you look at JSpecify, so you go out and look at JSpecify, because again, this is not a Spring Framework thing, right?
No, this is a big collaboration.
Yeah. There's huge collaboration between a lot of big companies out there using this in Java until one day, it's being worked on already, I think, but one day this happens at the JDK level. But Sebastian joked was like, hey, there's 4 annotations. Why did this take us 5 years to work on? So it's not just 4 annotations, right? If there's a ton of documentation around this, and these annotations can be used as return types. They can be used as parameters or on fields. You can use them with generics. You can use them with arrays. So there was a lot of documentation that went into like telling us how to use these, and the tools like Null Away that go in to help us like at build time. So what's exciting about this is you can use this in your Spring projects now in Spring Boot 4. But if you're just using a plain old Java object or a plain old Java project, you can use JSpecify as well. And I just, after spending some time going through it and kind of really understanding it, I think this is a much bigger deal than people are giving it credit for. Because as you said, the $1 billion mistake, right? Sure, but if we start using these and we can start giving our teams more confidence that what is going to production is not going to cause these null pointer exceptions. Imagine that no more weekends where you're getting a call going, something's going on in production at runtime. We've got to figure out what it is. Usually it's some performance issue or maybe even a null pointer exception. We can kind of alleviate that problem. And that's going to save us a lot of money. So I'm a big fan of this.
I'm looking at this question. Is there a simple way to upgrade? Teams will be working on functional changes and business wouldn't let team do Spring upgrade during that time. And team can't flex to do 2 things at the same time. This is a common thing where like, how do you fit in? Not just the upgrades to Spring Boot 4, but also the patches that happen along the way. Yes, the upgrades to the JVM. This is a common thing, and there is practice. And it was mentioned earlier in the chat. There's this tool called Open Rewrite, this framework called Open Rewrite that allows you to write code and deliver those as they call recipes to upgrade your software. So that you can have this kind of continuous upgrade, this automation. You can build it into pipelines. But I would advise against maybe agents. When I hear agents, I think AI and letting AI do these things. The better approach is something that's repeatable, deterministic, like an Open Rewrite recipe. And it's not just for Spring, it's for all the other things that you deliver as well. The common util library that you're giving to all of your teammates or the other, your peers inside of your enterprise. When you come out with a new common util 2.0, how do you get everybody else to upgrade it? Wouldn't it be nice if you could deliver a recipe along with it so that they can upgrade from common util 1.x to common util 2.x, and they don't have to go and learn it. They just get this automated way, run this recipe, upgrade all my uses of common util. That's the idea.
Yeah, and I just want to add Ted's comment here. What's great about JSpecify is you can apply it progressively, class by class or module by module. And yeah, what I found was like I would go into a package. So one of the annotations that you can use is @null marked. And basically what it's saying is everything in this package is now non-null by default. And again, I think the important part of this is that nullness is not the enemy here, right? It's that it's implicit in Java. Like we don't know whether it's null or not null. What I want to know is I want to be very explicit about this and say everything in this package by default is not null. And if I want it to be nullable, I will mark it as nullable. And now everything is very explicit. And so we run into less issues that way. I will point out it's not recursive though. So if you're in a package, you mark something as null marked and there's a package inside a package, you have to be explicit and say this particular package is also null marked. And I think they made that decision. And I think it's a good one because again, if we're migrating to this, then we can take it as Ted said, progressively. We don't need to just do everything at once and cause a whole bunch of issues. We can start at a package level and just change that there.
We could literally talk about this for an entire hour.
Yes, I think we should move on. Yeah.
The big thing though that I've taken from you is null is not the enemy.
Yeah, for sure.
I just want to know when it's a possibility.
I mean, yeah, sometimes you want to express the idea of something being null, right? But we just want to be explicit about it. And that's the biggest problem with Java is that everything is implicit, right? Okay, some other things I dove into over the last few weeks. So we talked about testing. There's some testing changes coming. So if I were to write like a REST API, and I was using something like the REST template prior to this, right? In Spring Boot 3.2, we came out with the REST client. Now I can use the REST client. I have this nice fluent API. I could talk to a service with it. It was great. But if I went to write a test, how would I test that? There was the test REST template, but wait, I'm using the REST client. So why would I use the test REST template? There are things like mock MVC. There's the web test client, but now I got to bring in like the web, the reactive stack dependencies if I just want to use that thing. So now in Spring Framework 7, in Spring Boot 4, there is the REST test client. And I got to play around with this a little bit. And I think, one of the things for me is it's basically this like unified tool that makes it easy to test REST APIs. And I like to think of this as like combining mock MVC and web test client into a single API. And I don't know about you, but whenever it comes to testing, I probably don't do it enough, one, but I always got to go look stuff up. And I'm not quite sure like which mechanism I'm supposed to use to test certain things. Now, all of you out there doing enterprise development every single day probably don't have this problem, but I admit I don't write enough tests to like fully understand all of the tools available to me in the world of Spring for testing. As I was playing with this REST test client, it just like was easy to use. And so every scenario that I had for like testing this controller with dependencies, testing it with a full application context, testing it with a slice, testing it with a real server, the test REST client just has all of those baked into it. So I don't have to like use everything else. And so that was really nice. It was really fun kind of going through and learning some of those things.
That's powerful stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Anything that makes it easier for me to write tests sounds like a huge win.
Yep. And now with this people still aren't probably writing tests. Everybody's using robots to write tests, but now at least you could point them to the docs and say, please use the REST test client when you write these tests for me.
Fantastic.
So I've got a video coming out on all this stuff that we're talking about. I've been putting videos together. One, because I like sharing content, but two, this is just my chance to like learn some of this stuff because we're talking to customers and developers everywhere about all the new things coming. So I'll have some videos on all of this, but I was really, really happy with the REST test client, and it's going to be my go-to now anytime I'm like testing APIs. So
fantastic. Love to hear that. Love to hear.
What else did I get the chance to play with? Oh, API versioning.
That was my next question. Did you take it for a spin? This is one of those things where there's definitely opinions out there at maturity levels of a certain scale, enterprises of a certain size. They've been doing this for a long time. They've got their own systems for API versioning, and there's definitely opinions. Why add it now?
Yeah, and the great news is you can keep doing that. You don't need to use what's built into Spring Framework 7 to version your APIs. Keep doing what you're doing. But here is where the power comes in for me. Uh, if you're like a solo developer and you're working on your own projects, do what you want to do, right? But in the enterprise, we have all these different teams working on different applications, developers jumping around to different projects. When you allow teams to kind of roll their own solution, you're going to have different solutions across an organization. So as a developer, when I jump from project A to project B, now I got to figure out what the heck's going on over here because they do it way differently than we do it, right? And then for me, what this brings is a consistency to how we version our APIs, and we don't have to like roll our own solutions to do so.
This becomes really powerful at scale, right? When I like your example, I'm referencing my enterprise has an API catalog of all the different things that are available to me. I've got credentials, so I can hit them. But the versioning in these ones is different than the versioning in the others. So it puts a lot of work on me, the consumer.
Yeah.
But if I've got consistency across, the enterprise for my API versioning, that's a real value add when it comes to upgrading our common util, right? If I've got those versions, and it also, when I have these versioned APIs, that makes it a little bit easier for leadership to say, hey, you want to upgrade this thing, upgrade it, put it onto a different version. So, hey, we've got our API against Spring Boot 3 over here at API v3, and our API against Spring Boot 4 is over here on API v4. It's a great way to try things out, to flex those muscles of having more than one version running in production. That's also a good skill to have. I don't say, have dozens of them, just like the Spring team, deprecate the oldest ones, but have a path to move forward. Let your customers stay on the version that they are on for some amount of time, but give them a path to upgrade without having everybody having to do it at once. This is powerful stuff.
Yeah, and for anybody who's been listening to me over the last few years, you don't have to do this if you're on GraphQL, because GraphQL allows you to basically adopt new versions without having to switch versions. But if you're in the REST world, I know a lot of us are building REST APIs. This for me is a big change. And so we give you a bunch of different ways to kind of set a version, right? You can do it from a path segment where the URL is like API/v1/users or whatever, users v1, whatever that is. So you can do it from a path segment. I like to consider this as like when I move from version 1 to version 2, that's at a path segment level. That seems to me like big breaking changes, right? And then we give you these other ways that you can do it as well, like from a request header, from a query param, from a media parameter. To me, these are like, hey, I'm just adding a new field to the API. Let's move to version 1.1, right? Or 1.0.1, whatever the case may be. And we do use semantic versioning. So it's major, minor, patch. If you alleviate the minor and the patch, then it's the same. Like version 1 is really 1.0.0. But the other thing is you can kind of mix and match these. So I can use like a request header and a query param. But anytime you use the path segment, that is going to override everything. So you can't mix and match path segment with those other methods, but the other ones you can kind of mix and match. So I got set up, found it very easy to configure, and they even provided us with a bunch of options for like setting a specific version parser. So if I didn't want to say in my URL API/1.0.0/users, and I wanted to say v1 like you just said, I can write my own version parser to say this is what my version looks like. And so it's really configurable and easy to use, and there's just no reason not to use it if you're versioning your APIs. So
fantastic. There's a question here. I think this is a good question. With Spring AI, we expect to see flux of response in the next release. I'm going to start off by saying Spring AI the next version is not coming out with Spring Boot 4. We have this kind of release train. Spring Framework 7 gets released. Spring Security gets released. Spring I think data is in that top bucket, and then we do Spring Boot and that tier of projects, and then comes Spring Cloud. Spring AI is kind of the end of that tail of the release train. So Spring AI, the next version, the 2.0 version, it's not on the calendar until February. Dan, I know you've been working with Spring
I got a
AI
better one for you.
milestones. Yeah, tell me.
It's already there. You can return a
Boom!
flux.
Boom!
Yeah. So the Spring AI has support for both blocking and non-blocking. So if I want to ask a question to an LLM and just get like a response back, I can do that. That's a blocking call. If I want to ask an LLM a large query, the one I always use in all my demos is like, hey, I'm visiting Kansas City next week. Give me 10 places I got to visit. I don't want to wait for those 10, just like I'm using ChatGPT. I want to see those in a streaming response, right? You can do that now. Instead of using the .call method, use the .stream method, and we can stream those responses back. So that is already there.
And if you'd like to take that for a spin, I advise you to take a look at Dan's Spring AI Workshop. This is literally the repository that I use when I'm on the road. I do all the things. I'm just borrowing Dan's workshop because it has all of those examples, including the one that he just mentioned.
Yeah. What else was I going to say? So yeah. Oh, and then along with that, Spring AI is on has a milestone 4 that was just released. So the current version of Spring AI is 1.0.3. There is a 1.1.0 version. We are now on milestone 4 of that.
Yep.
Check that out. It seems like a 2.0 release because there is so much in it, especially around building MCP clients and servers, the ability to use like the Google Gen SDK instead of having to climb through like the Vertex hoops. There's a bunch of stuff in Spring AI in 1.1.0, so check that out.
100 issues closed.
Whew.
100
Wow.
issues closed on this milestone.
That's awesome.
Yes, indeed. Take it for a spin.
And
give us your feedback. Here's the thing. I don't assume that everybody that uses Spring is having as good of a time as I am. I'm here in the happy path, doing the things that I know how to do, that I've been doing for years, and I'm getting small improvements. But we've got customers that are using all of the edge cases. We've got customers that have said, hey, Spring team, would you add this method for us? Would you add this feature for us? Because we use it in 100,000 apps around the world, and this would be really valuable. This would be a valuable addition for us if you added this to, let's say, Spring Security, so that we didn't have to have our own library. Wouldn't it be cool if you were in that position? Wouldn't it be cool if some of the patterns that you have that might be being replicated across other industries, wouldn't it be cool if you could make a use case for a new way of doing things and get that shared back to the Spring team? Spring is an open source framework. This is an open source community, and a lot of the advancements coming to Spring are from you. So if you're not having the greatest experience, if you ever said, I wish Spring did this, if you don't say something, that's your fault. Be the change that you want to see. Like, open up an issue for the things that you would like to see in Spring. This is your ask. I'm asking you right now. If there are things that you'd like to see improved in Spring, don't hesitate. Ask right now. Get your questions, get your issues in.
All right, so I'll get back to a few more of my favorite features, but I also want to kind of point out that we're talking about features at a framework and Spring Boot level. There are a whole bunch of projects in the ecosystem that are upgrading their versions to the next version, like Spring Data has a bunch of features coming out that you should really take a look at. Things like AOT repositories, right? There are features coming in Spring Security 7, one of which is multi-factor authentication. That is a really, really nice feature coming that has been something that we've wanted in Spring Security for a long time now. And I'm happy to say that Josh Cummings on the Spring Security team is going to come on this show and talk to us about it in a few weeks here. So look out for that.
This is exciting.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome.
How many of us, right, we'll raise our hand, how many of us have ever tried to implement some multi-factor authentication, right? As far back as like 2015, 2016. I remember trying to
Yeah.
glue things together to say, okay, yep, I'm going to send a message to your phone now. And then, yep,
Yep.
I'm going to send a message to your email. And I just
Yep.
want to make sure. But yeah, now that's, again, it's all
I've
about
seen it
Explorer.
in action too, and it's just some configuration. When you create the configuration for a security filter chain, boom, you just say, hey, these are my 2 authentication types. Yeah, I need both of these for someone to be authenticated, right?
Happy to see you here, Lawrence.
Oh, yes. Good friend of the show, Lawrence. So yeah, so I guess what I'm saying is we're taking a look at a lot of these features at a high level from framework and boot, but go check out the release notes for the different projects in the ecosystem because everybody's bumping up their versions to kind of align with Spring Boot 4, Spring Framework 7. All right. Another one I think we can talk about, I put a video together on this, is programmatic bean registration. Now, this, I feel like, I don't know why. I feel like this is controversial because people are saying like it's not for me, but they're right in saying this. This new feature is not something you'll use all the time. For 90+% of the use cases, when you want to declare a bean in your application, you can still use the @bean annotation. Now, programmatic bean registration is just another way for us to configure beans in the application context. In the past, if you wanted to like interact with like, is some class there or is some environment property set, whatever, you had to use things like conditional on bean and some other mechanisms to make this work. In Spring Framework 7, there is now a bean registrar interface. So what this means is you can implement this interface, you can override a method here and say like, okay, I have access to the mechanism to register a bean, but I also have access to the environment. So the example that I put together is, let's say that we had like a message service. So I have this interface called message service. I only had 2 in there. I had an email and an SMS. But let's say like we had 100 ways that we could do this, right? But as an app, like on a per app basis, maybe I only use one of these, right? Maybe I only use email. So if I'm only going to use email, why would I register 100 beans into the application context? Every time I run the application, anytime I run a full integration test, all these beans are loaded into the context. I don't want that. I want as few beans into the context as possible, right? Because it keeps my app running in using high performance, right? So now what you can do is you can say, okay, based on the environment, I read an environment variable. If it's email, go ahead and load this bean into, like, register this bean for me. If it's this, register this one. If I wanted to, I could loop over something 100 times and based on some things, do some things. These are things hard to do in an @bean method, right?
You know what? That use case, I feel like one of our other good friends over here at VMware Tanzu, I feel like that use case, I know it wasn't the reason why we added that, but there was a use case from large enterprise customer where this is what we wanted to do. We wanted to register beans based on maybe some files in a file system. Like, oh, register this bean so that I can read that file, the CSV or the other crazy formatted thing. I don't want to load all the file formats. I only want to load those file formats. And that use case, you just connect that back to another.
Yep.
This is
because again, that's one instance of the app. What if we have 100,000 people using the application and now we're loading 100 beans for every one of those apps when we're only using one of them, right? Again, this is something you could do before. It wasn't pretty though. This is much easier to do and pretty straightforward. I ran some examples and it was just easy to do. But again, 90% of the time, you're probably using the @bean annotation and just registering a bean. But when you need that like extra bit of configuration and access to the environment, this was a really nice addition.
Yeah, there's some cool stuff to explore in this programmatic bean registration.
Yep.
I like that.
Okay, another one that I first learned about at Spring 1, and I've been running into lately, building out all of these demos, was the new modularization of Spring.
What does
So
that mean?
Phil got on stage at Spring One and kind of talked about this and said like, hey, back in 2014, long time ago. Oh my gosh, that's like 11 years ago, huh? Um, we have this like auto configuration jar, and it had all of the auto configuration for anything you would use. And back in 2014, that was 185 kilobytes. And now that has ballooned over 2 megabytes. So now we are shipping this thing when you're probably not using 80% of the things in there, right? So now they've kind of split this out and into different auto configurations. So the example that I'm going to use is the one I hit right away. I started a new Spring Boot 4 app. I wanted to use the REST client in it. So I picked MVC. Oh, REST client's in MVC. Let's go. Went to use it. Could not find bean of type REST client. What the heck? What's going on? So I needed to bring in the REST client as a dependency to use that, because no longer is that auto configuration for that just there. But if I bring in the starter for the REST client, now the auto configuration's there. Everything kind of works as is. So I'll say this. I like this approach better. When you upgrade, this may be one of the things that catches you. Like,
Yep.
I'm using REST client, but I have not declared that. We need to fix that. There are two approaches to this. One, there is a dependency that you can add to your application. I don't know the exact one. It's in the docs, but like auto configuration classic,
Yep.
right? And you're saying, I want this to work just like it did in Spring Boot 3. So if you want to upgrade right away, that's one thing you can do. And then you could start to pull that out and pull in the dependencies that are missing. I like that approach, but I understand that like there's some work to do there. But that's one of the things, again, just making our application smaller, lighter, not loading all of this information that we don't need when we're not using it.
Here's the other thing that I've ran into, again, with customers just in the last 3 weeks, is when customers are building their own starters, their internal starters. What do? They follow the example that the Spring team did. So they were making these auto configuration jars that had all the things. And then they were also running into the complexity of, when I have all of these options, what do I do when I see these two things on the class path? Which one is being implied? What does the user actually want? When you've split things apart, when you've said, hey, I've pulled in the REST test client or the REST client starter, I get those configurations. And I've removed the ambiguity. So this, again, this is a problem that you have seen, that the Spring team has seen. So we've separated it, made it easier for the Spring team to make those decisions on which client to use. And then also for you, for the community, you'll follow that example, hopefully, and it'll make it easier for you and the starters that you're building inside of your organization.
Yep. All right, I'm going to mention one more, but I'm not going to go too deep in this. But Jackson 3 is now being used in most of the Spring projects and in the framework. There is the ability to use Jackson 2 still. I haven't like tested that out. There are just a couple of things that you should know there. This is really around like when you go into config, like the defaults for Jackson 2 are different than some of the defaults for Jackson 3. This is all in the documentation. You want to read through that. If you were using like overriding some kind of default configuration for Jackson, this is something you should understand. There's also, instead of the object mapper, which was mutable, there's now the JSON mapper, which is immutable. So when you start working with JSON in Spring Boot 4 projects, you're going to use the JSON mapper instead of the object mapper. So those are two kind of things that stuck out there. I think the big thing for me is that, we're moving forward with Jackson, but Jackson and something like Null Away, these might seem like, okay, nice to haves. They were done across the portfolio projects in the Spring ecosystem. So these were really big changes that had to happen at a framework level and at all of the project levels. So I just want to say hats off to the Spring team, because I know that was not easy, and kudos to getting those things in. Those are really big. So
there's so many more. There are these downstream dependencies, the libraries that the Spring team uses There's a handful of these other dependencies that we bring in, and we get community members asking like, how can we haven't upgraded to this version of this? But I'm very proud at how fast the Spring Framework team has been able to move on things like Jakarta, right? We're far and away moving faster than some of the other frameworks that are out there and adopting these new versions. But Jakarta, the Elasticsearch, Flyways, Hibernates, these are massive frameworks that we're moving the needle on.
JUnit 5 is now there, so that is kind of, I don't know if it's 5 and 6. I know JUnit 5 is at least there because I was using some of the @display name annotations in my project. Kotlin's another big one. We've moved to like 2.2.
2.20.
Yeah, so that's a big one for the community. Jakarta, as you said, now we'll be on Jakarta E11.
Yep.
So this gives us things like GPA 3.2, bean validation, servlet 6.1. So yeah, a lot of things going on there.
Yeah, it's big, and we have customers that are like, when are we going to move to this? And right, some of these projects, they realize that they're holding up releases. Some of these projects have had release candidates for years, and it took I'm guessing the Spring team kind of getting involved and saying, hey, we would like to use this new version in just like a couple of weeks here. Do you think you could wrap up one of these releases for us and for the community? So that, again, we don't want to hold things back. We want to be on the latest possible versions. So the Spring team works closely with a lot of the other projects that you're using. A lot of those projects that are in this release train, they are not just supported, but the different versions of all the different, the Flyways, GraphQLs, Hibernates, Jacksons, Jetties, all these things are now guaranteed to work together when you use the Spring Boot version, this release train.
Cool, man. There are so many things we could talk about. I would say check out that Road to GA blog that if you're on the live stream, I shared it with you. If not, it'll be in the release notes. One of the things they talked about on there is the core Spring resilience features being brought in. You get a lot of that stuff that came from Spring retries now baked into the framework, which is nice. There are some nice updates around HTTP interface clients. If you had to like set up a proxy factory and create an instance of a client, a little bit of boilerplate code for one, a lot if you're creating many of these. So that got way simplified. A single annotation can now create clients for you from those interfaces. There's a new JMS client along the same lines as like the REST client and the JDBC client. Nice, easy to use, fluent API. So just so many things coming. I want to talk about as many as we can over the next month, talk to some people, get ready for this exciting release. And then probably won't even stop there. We'll keep talking about it after the release. Yeah. I want to leave you with one thing, DaShaun, before we get out of here, because I tweeted this on Friday. I sent it out on LinkedIn, and it might have been one of my most liked LinkedIn messages ever, which is crazy.
Yeah. Did
you see the addition to the Spring Initializr?
Only because of your social media.
All right.
Yep,
so if you go to start.spring.io, there is a new section here under the metadata called configuration. And now you can switch from properties to YAML. So a lot of people reached out and said, oh, the first thing I ever did when I created a Spring project was rename application.properties to application.yaml. Now you don't need to do that. One less step. And somebody was like, well, what's the default? And the default by itself was properties, because that is. But the great thing about the Spring Initializr is it remembers everything that you do. So if you select YAML, the next time you come back, it's going to be YAML.
Fantastic.
And technology. I just thought that was really cool. I didn't even know that was happening.
I didn't.
Again, it's such a small, I guess, change. But I just was on the Spring Initializr one day and I saw that. I'm like, I love that. Brilliant.
And thanks. Shout out to Moritz because the caching of the defaults, just that caching the cookie, so that when I come back, I'm not switching from Gradle to Maven every time. My default's already set. On all my
we get the privilege of hanging out with the great Moritz tomorrow morning on another internal call, and I'm going to make sure I thank him for that.
Yeah,
thanks for reminding me.
Stuff.
Cool. So Spring Boot 4, Spring Framework 7 coming later this month. We'll have a bunch of episodes around that this month. We'll talk to some of the people on the Spring team, like Phil Webb, like Josh Cummings. Got a couple more maybe in the bag that we'll talk to. And we're excited about this release. I hope you are too. And let us know if you want to hear about anything specific. So maybe we could do a deep dive on that. All right, with that, we will see you next week. Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.